Hey, Daniel. Thanks for joining us. Really awesome to have you on Building Builders podcast.
Yeah, thanks for asking me to come join. I know I've heard a lot of good things about you and your people, and it's been a pleasure talking with Luke and ready to hop in, talking to you too, get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, thanks. I've been looking forward to it. Daniel, maybe just to get started, um, just a high level you could share with our listeners, anyone who may not know. Tell us what you're up to. What do you do?
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure that out a little bit more each and every day. But from a very high level, I have a business. My wife and I, we own it, and we help construction companies with their marketing, and then we also do some general consulting when it comes to helping with employee retention and talent acquisition, as well as just kind of making processes better. So we have that outside perspective that we can bring in. We talk to lots of contractors and kind of connect people together where they we think they need to be connected. So on a lower level, kind of more in the weeds, the marketing side, we do everything from photographing and videoing people of the company so we can really highlight them, to building good websites so that the public and potential new hires, potential clients, etc., can find them and actually know what these companies are about. And then we also help them with their social media. So we'll write posts and really focus on people stories, not just your typical corporate marketing BS. We're really here to put true, real, authentic stories out, because that's what attracts people, and that's the biggest problem that the industry is facing right now, is bringing new people in and keeping them around.
Love it. Yeah, I love the word when you say authentic. It's one of Dozer's founding principles. We talk about being authentic and true to yourself almost every single day here at Dozer. So one of the reasons why I'm pretty excited to chat. I think we're going to have a lot of similarities. So how long have you been doing this for?
Yeah, so the construction side. So backing up a little bit, I have zero blue collar background. It's interesting. I grew up just outside of Austin, Texas, in the suburbs, and my dad was a data analyst, and my mom was a stay at home mom. I don't have an uncle in construction or anything like that. But I picked up a camera in high school, and shortly after, started a video production company. Got married about 6 months later, and realized I actually had to make some money. Had to pay some bills, and started working with just all sorts of different industries. If I morally agreed with what I was being asked to do, and I thought I could tell a good story, I'd say yes, and I'd do it. A couple years in, 2 or 3 years in, I'd been filming this relay race. It was a 200-mile foot race from close to Austin, Texas, down to Houston, Texas. And the CEO or the CFO of a local construction company, a local civil company, reached out and sent me an email afterward, and he said, "Hey, I saw this video you did for this race. I ran the race, loved it. We need something like this for our company." And I kind of scratched my head a little bit. I was like, why does a construction company need a video? I didn't really register to me, and I thought about it a little bit more, and I was like, oh, I have no idea what they do. That's why they need a video. So
Right.
I went out on site with them. We just, I think the first project we did was we went through like 2 or 3 different projects, and they do mostly, subdivisions. So they'll do all the earthwork, all the utilities, all the way up to, making sure that paving and curb and everything's in, and then they turn it over to the builders.
Hmm.
And I remember just going out to this massive subdivision site. They had pipe going in the ground. They were still doing. They had big trenchers. We're in Central Texas, and so we use trenchers a lot out here.
Hmm.
We had cut and fill going, so they were moving all kinds of earth. And I'd never been around these big machines or big pieces of equipment, and so my mind was just blown just at the scale of the project, and the fact that this all happens right underneath the public's nose. Like
Right.
the company is located 5 minutes from the house that I grew up in, and it's been there since the 80s, well before I was born. I had no idea it was there. No idea. the project that I went to, the first project I set foot on, 10 minutes from the house I grew up in. Absolutely oblivious, right? And I realized while I was there, the general public has no idea that this is happening, yet it affects their daily life so
Mhm.
much. You can't. I kind of put the picture together in my head. The puzzle pieces all started to fall together. Like, you can't flush your toilets, you can't drive down the road, you don't have,
Mhm.
your basic needs, your food, water, shelter, clothing, etc., without the blue collar world, without people coming in and laying the foundation, paving the way for those all of the infrastructure that supports that, right? And so the picture kind of started to form in my mind of like, wow, this is really important work. People don't know anything about what's happening or the people doing it. Obviously, the machinery is badass, and I was, fell in love with that a little bit. But the biggest thing was the people, and to
Yeah.
this day, my North Star is the people. And I realized that, I coming from a household that was more white collar, if you will, to stick with the terminology. Um, I didn't. My parents weren't talking down on people who were blue collar or anything like that. But there's a societal stigma that if you work with your hands, if you work outside, if you work in construction, whatever, right, landscaping, mining, you ran out of options, or you're not very smart, you didn't go to college, or you're a little bit dirty, maybe you have a record. Like, there's all this stuff that goes through people's heads because society has controlled the narrative of what it means to be a blue collar worker. And within 10 minutes, I'm talking to guys while I'm out there, and they would give me the shirt off their back, and I'm not joking. Like,
Right.
they're salt of the earth people. 95%, 99% of the people you meet are salt of the earth people out there. And it just saddened me to know that, like, I grew up thinking differently, and so many people think differently because they just never get the chance to actually see who these people are and the fact that they have such an important job on the day to day. So my North Star that day became helping blue collar people feel seen, valued, and heard. And it just so happens that that's very advantageous to the companies that we work with, because if they genuinely care about their people, then they're able to highlight their people, make them feel valued, make them feel seen and heard, and help them feel like they have a place there and a purpose, which is, I think, a lot more than, if they do that right, they're doing better than a lot of the other industries that they're competing
I love this so much, Daniel. I come from the trades myself. Have been building projects for many years. There's so much here. I feel like the whole system is set up to hide construction. It's like nobody wants to see or hear it. It should just happen, sort of at night, so it doesn't impact me. But there's such important, such amazing work happening by such great people. I love that you're, spending this time, trying to share these stories, right? I mean, it, it gets me thinking about, like, just how proud people are when they build these projects. I'm sure you've been in a truck with somebody before, driving by, and they say, "Hey, I built that," right? Like, everyone, growing up seems to have a grandma or a grandpa. It's like, "Hey, I built that house," or, "Hey, I built that landscape over there. See that tree? I planted that, 50 years ago, and look at the size of it." Like, it meant something, right?
with.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I actually have a story for yourself. So I do this to my kids all the time. Like, it's just like, it's very familiar. I did it a few days ago. I take them skating in downtown Guelph, and I remind them every single time we're down there at that skating rink, "Hey, who built this road?" "Yeah, Daddy did." Right? Like,
Nice.
actually laying the bricks on that road is like something that I am incredibly proud of.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that just don't get that chance to tell that story, and it's hidden. We're hiding the stories, and you're bringing them out. It's super cool.
Don't ever
Yeah.
stop telling them that. then they'll tell their grandkids, and you got to keep it up. People got to know that you helped build that road.
Yeah, keep telling those stories. I just, I just absolutely love it. So, let me ask you a couple questions. What kind of things inspire you most when you're out on these job sites? With the people that you're shooting.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the most inspiring thing to me is ultimately the humility you know, behind a lot of these people, and they show up to work each day to support their family, and they are literally working their ass off day in and day out. And I talk to them, and 90% of them, their family has no idea what they do each and every day. Their family has not been to a job site. Their family has no idea what they go through. You know, the companies that we work with aren't the kind that are necessarily chewing their people out, or giving them a hard time. But a lot of these people are getting bitched at all day long, about silly stuff, and then they come home and they have to be on for their families, and it's a hard industry to work in, but yet they have so much humility that they put that time and that effort in. And they care about the people around them a lot too. I think that's one of the coolest things, is that they spend equal to or more time with the people that they're on the job with than they do with their actual family, and so they're second family. And you can really see that, whether it's how they've got each other's back when it comes to safety, or whether it's just talking to one of I can go and talk to a foreman, and he can tell me about each and every one of his guys, and
Yeah.
he can tell me about basically their life story, because they've worked together for 15, 20 years, oftentimes. And so that's really inspiring to me. I think on the other side of the coin, something that's been inspiring to me a lot lately is when I run into young guys, and young men and women both working in the field, and
Hmm.
how they're fired up. They're excited. Number one, to get their picture
Hmm.
taken, and all sorts of stuff like that. But they're genuinely excited about the work they're doing, because they do recognize that it's important, and they do recognize that not there aren't hundreds of thousands of other people who are going to do it if they don't. There really
Right.
isn't, and that they know that. And so I think there's this dichotomy of extreme humility, but also deep pride in what they do, and I think that's special. You can't find I don't think you can find that in many other places.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny you say that there's you know not enough people heading into the trades, right? I mean, it is a fantastic career. So much pride, coming out of it. I love what I do now. I definitely miss what I was doing. It's it's a difficult and great spot all at the same time. You're when you're getting out to these job sites and you meet the people you're going to take photos of. Um, do you dive right in and just start taking pictures, or like is there a process? Do you start asking questions and learning their stories first?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it depends on the job and kind of when I show up. If I show up in the morning, I'm usually there for the morning meetings. I'm going over all the JHAs and everything, and just listening in to see kind of how they do things. Because one of the other things that I'm always doing is I want to make sure that the companies that we're working with are true to their word when they say that they do care about their people. And I don't
Right.
want, if I see something that doesn't line up with what the company stands for or what they've told me that they stand for, I want to let them know. And not in the sense of saying, hey, that so and so said or did this, but in the sense of, hey, I know we've talked about this in the past. How can we make this a reality? Because I've seen that maybe it's not the way that you think it is in the field. Um, so sometimes, I'm listening in on that. Other times, I might show up to a second job site in the day, and I'll show up in the middle of the day, and I'll just kind of go up to the first person I see. And if they're, let's say it's a dozer operator, if he's waiting on
Hmm.
tracks, I might, say, hey, can I come talk to you? And I'll go up on the tracks and talk to him for a bit, kind of get to hear his story. I would say I spend about half the time in the field, usually talking to the people, because that's how
Hmm.
you actually get their story. I can take, badass pictures of excavators, bombing trucks,
Sure.
and loaders laying gravel and, in the pipe bedding and stuff like that. But if I don't have something deeper than that behind the photo, especially if I'm writing a post about that person, at the end of the day, it's just a cool photo.
Right.
And so I really want to give a voice to those people. So I try to spend as much time as I can without obviously taking away from their productivity, talking to them and really getting to know them. Because I also, me being there, I recognize is a way that they feel valued and seen and heard. And so giving them the opportunity to share, their story with
Yeah.
me and thus the world, I think is one of the most important aspects of what I do.
So two follow-up questions on this. Does it take long for them to open up, and tell their story? And then two, what's the story normally? Is it, do they talk about the job site, like the job that day? Do they talk about previous work? Are they like, so much is going through my head. Are they talking about, their life, their family, why they're doing this? Where does the conversation normally head?
Yeah, great question. So obviously it depends on each person's level of comfortability, but I would say it's pretty rare that I have somebody who's just not interested in or not willing to open up. But what I always lead with is just explaining why I'm there. If they don't
Mm-hmm.
know why I'm there, I explain, hey, what you do is really important. I'm here to show it off to the world because these people, usually there's a road near the site, and I say these people driving by have no idea what the hell you do or how important it is. So I'm just here to show that off because what you do matters and what you do is really important. And like your job is you have a badass job. You support society. And so I kind of give them that validation and remind them of the purpose and the greatness of their purpose that they have being
Right.
on site that day. And a lot of the time that kind of it plays into their pride of what they're happy about their work. And it also kind of helps them to open up a little bit and be like, okay, this guy understands a little bit of what's going on in my head too. And so then I try to steer the conversation towards, whatever they'll open up about, but I like to hear about their family. I like to hear about how they got into construction in the first place. I like to hear about what they love about the company they're working for. I like to hear about what they would change if they had the opportunity to. And I think it's cool because as somebody who doesn't work for these companies directly, it puts me in a unique position where I'm able to then, in some instances, take that information and say, wow, I've heard from 3 different people that they really, they really think there's disconnect with dispatch on their trucking, and they really think that this is the solution, but nobody's maybe brought it up to somebody at a higher level. And so then I can go sit down with the right person and I can say, hey, not naming names, I've heard that this is an issue I've kind of made sure that I've done my due diligence. It sounds like this is an issue across the board. What are your thoughts on that? Has this come up? Is this something that's been talked about? And then I can be a vehicle almost for some of that feedback that maybe they didn't have they didn't have the opportunity to set up a meeting with the right person, or
Right.
they don't have, maybe they don't feel they have the voice that they do have to go and talk to that person. So it's cool. It really can go any different direction. It just depends on the individual. There's some guys who will talk to me about. There's one guy I've talked to a few times, and he's taking care of both of his parents right now. At his house, he's got 2 kids, his wife, and both his parents have dementia, and they're living with them on the couches.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
it's a hard time, but I can talk to him about that, and he'll open up, and it's special, like when you get to give somebody the space to talk about that and get to see their character and who they are as a person. Because then I'm not going to put plaster on social media, hey, this person
Yeah.
has this going on in their life, but I can speak to the attributes that they have as an individual and that they are strong and still showing up to work, even though life is not easy right now.
Right.
So
Love that. You can still be respectful, but, showcase some of the attributes. That's really cool.
yeah.
So you've had a lot of these conversations. If you were to, aggregate them, and say, this is the most common, positive thing, what I love about the job, and the most common, this is what I'd change. What are those messages that you're hearing?
Hmm. If I had to choose the most common thing that people enjoy about the job, I think it's the feeling that they are actually getting to see the work completed. What they do is tangible. They can see the progress every day, and it's just not the case in a lot of jobs. And I think they understand that. They understand that going and sitting behind the desk, like I do that myself, and I don't see it as much as many tangible results as I wished I did sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
but they understand that like their job is unique in that sense, and that's something really that matters to them. And being outside as well is another thing. A lot of folks really like to be in the outdoors and don't want to be cooped up inside of an office or
Right.
whatever, right? A warehouse or whatever. I think the thing that people have kind of complaints about the most or concerns about the most tend to be in the world of communication. And so I think a lot of it is just I'm having a hard time getting information from somebody, or I'm having a hard time, I have to jump through these hoops to get this or that. And so a lot of the time it's a frustration about some sort of process that could be more efficient, or a lot of the time it might come back to a certain individual who needs a little bit more training on how to lead or how to communicate it more effectively, right? And so it just depends, but that's a common one that I run into.
That's some awesome feedback for any listeners or business owners. We hear the same thing. Communication's key. You can't over communicate, right? So yeah, good feedback. Also, just wanted to say I really kind of recognize or feel the same thing with doing tangible work. I went to school for landscape architecture. I came out and I enjoyed designing. I hated AutoCAD. I finished school and I'm like, oh boy, I don't want to sit and do AutoCAD. And absolutely nothing against those who do AutoCAD. It just wasn't for me, right? I mean, so I ended up pivoting and started a construction company, a landscape construction company, because I wanted to plant those plants and lay the brick, and I wanted to feel it, and I wanted to see at the end of the day, this is what I had done. And many years later, it gets back to the earlier comments of, not only was it cool to do the work in the moment and see it at the end of the day, but now to have kids using it and seeing it, like it's very, very cool. So again, I just really recognize or align with much of what you're saying. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the job and the work that you're doing. We noticed that you've been doing a lot of work with a company in Texas called Cash Construction. Would love to hear a little bit more, just as an example of what you're doing out there.
Yeah, so Cash is actually it's the first company, the CFO of that company reached out to me, and that's kind of how I ended up in the construction world. I really have him to thank for a lot of kind of the direction that my career's gone, and I'm thankful, really thankful and grateful, because it's where my passion is truly. Um, but yeah, man, where Cash was when I started working with them in 2018, I think, versus where it is today, they have had so much positive change. And I'm not relating that sounds really arrogant. That's not that's not all due to me by any means. Um, but I think they're a fine example of really honing in on what matters to the people at their company, and then trying to put in place the right leadership, and then being willing to let leaders who aren't on the same mission or on the same path make the decision to leave, even when it puts some constraints on needing to hire a new person, or even when it is difficult, right? It's hard to let people who maybe don't fit the culture well go, but they've been able to do that and then replace them with people who really help take them on the direction that they're headed, that they're wanting to head. And I think that's been one of the biggest things that they've done that has helped them be successful and continue to grow and be a better workplace for people, right? It helps fix those communication errors. And sometimes it's moving people from one role to another role. Sometimes it's horizontal movement, right? Or vertical movement, even of just, hey, this might not be the role for you. Do you feel like you align more with our mission in this role? And really being willing to develop people. And that's something that they are doing more and more. I think in the last year, they hired on a training manager who's now doing he's doing everything from OSHA 30 training with the guys so that they have all of the proper credentials and stuff they need to do some bigger jobs, and also so that they have a broader understanding of not just what they need to do but also why they need to work certain ways to be safe in some of the more technical aspects of the job, I guess. And then
Right.
he'll train them in things from that to offering basic construction Spanish class for English speakers and basic construction English class for Spanish speakers, just to help bridge that communication gap.
Right.
And that's just I think, a really neat example of what something that they've been doing in terms of training and development for their people, and really choosing to invest in them.
I gotta say, I was commenting earlier about how important it is to communicate and how you can't over communicate, right? I feel like a subtle difference that, you may be inspiring or contributing to, 10,000 foot view from the outside here is, by showcasing these stories, you might be giving, a way for the company to listen as well, right? It's one thing for leaders to communicate and talk, or maybe talk at, their team members. It's an entirely different thing to listen. And for great communication, it really has to be a two-way street, and to be able to, recommend and open up those doors and those opportunities for people to be able to advance within, your organization. You really need to know, everything. You need to know what they love. Why do they love doing it? The why is so important. It's not the what, it's the why. And then, try and find opportunities for those great people to continue doing what they love, and expanding. So, yeah, again, I think, very cool stuff that you're doing there.
Well, swinging back, I mean, I think one of the things that I think kind of kickstarted, and there's a whole slew of other things that I think are really neat that they're doing. But one of the things that I think kickstarted some of the changes that they had was identifying their core values, right? And I know that's very cliche, very like, okay, we have a set of values now, and that's going to change everything. And I don't think that they took it that way. What they did, though, was they involved every single employee from field to office,
Mm-hmm.
from C-level down, in
Yep.
deciding what those core values were going to be and what actually mattered. So rather than saying, hey, we're going to create this new culture, they said, okay, what is our culture currently? What do people care about currently? And then let's lean into that strength. And I think that was a really smart move on their part, because it's created buy-in. It's not just the leader's vision for all of the people. It's everybody has buy-in to the way that the direction that they're going. And it's kind of set the stage for a lot of this other good change that they have. And something that just came to mind, we're on the Building Builders podcast. One of the things that, the Nathan, their executive VP, talks about is that they're builders at heart, and they want, like, their goal is to help people build their careers and help them essentially develop into the people that they want to become. And so what better place to be talking about it than right here on the Building Builders podcast?
Yeah, and it must be true if we're talking about it all the way over here, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
right, it's something that everyone can remember and live by. Is this making it easier for them with recruitment? Telling these stories.
Yeah, so kind of yeah, going over to more of what I'm doing with them. So we started out just doing some kind of one-off projects, and then that turned into doing kind of a monthly visit with them every month, where I go out for a day and I visit a handful of sites and get to know the people like we're talking about, and then I write these posts and help them kind of run their social media, that kind of thing, and help also raise awareness for these guys so that they can, these guys and gals can show their family. They can see that they're on Facebook working. There's a picture of me driving this haul truck, right? And I get to show my kids that, and they've never seen that before. And um, I've really gotten to see, and especially in a couple of instances, but I've really gotten to see kind of a level of pride and almost loyalty grow
Mm-hmm.
within the company just from people recognizing that the company is willing to invest in something as simple as that, because it goes a long
Right.
way. It goes a long way being able to show your kid, hey, this is me standing in front of my 80-ton excavator, right? Like that's so cool. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't get that opportunity to share that with their family, and that's personal. That's really makes it something that they take home. Um, and so that's been neat. One of the biggest changes that I've seen, though, since we started working with them, is that early on they had a lot of the same people issues when it came to field personnel and trying to fill roles and whatnot. That everybody's feeling the hurt on that. I just talked to their current recruiter, which I work with her pretty frequently, so I'm always chatting with her. But I hadn't asked about it in a while, and I was talking to her probably a month ago, and she told me she's been there for 8 months, and she has yet to have to truly pursue filling a single field position role because they just constantly have uh, they constantly have either people staying with the company and not leaving, or they have somebody there to fill that role because the people are that, the culture is that ingrained in the people and they want their friends to come work there. And so, people know that the company is there. They know that the company is invested in their people. And I think that's a mix of, work that their leadership has done, as well as, what we've done with putting the story out there, making them known uh, to the world. Because otherwise, there's a lot of companies out there that just people don't know that they're there unless you are deep into the civil market or whatever, the mining market locally, whatever it is, right?
Right.
You probably don't know every single company that is in that space. And so the fact that we've been able to kind of help build their presence out there and showcase them as a contractor who cares and as a contractor who gives a voice to their people, um, I think has made a big difference in that as well.
Yeah, for most people on this, listening to this will know that is incredibly unusual to, not have a challenge with recruiting and filling roles, especially in construction. So, yeah,
I was
definitely
blown away.
amazing. Yeah, it's awesome. Great to hear. Um, so maybe a little bit different direction. What's the biggest misconception about construction that you hear out there?
Whew, that's a great question. I think the most common one is, road construction is just a pain in the ass and it takes forever and it's just in my
Yeah.
way, right? Well, it's like, well, what are you driving on right now? A road, right? Um,
Yeah.
I think that's the most common one. I think that the largest misconception has to be with the people. The largest misconception is that people in the blue collar world are maybe standoffish or more rough around the edges or just not as nice or kind. It's just false. It's just false.
Yeah.
But it's
So wrong.
very yeah. But it's very much a societal stigma that exists. It's a stereotype that exists, and I think it exists because as an industry we've kind of faded into the background and said, we're just going to be quiet over here. We're going to focus on building our work, and that's going to be enough. And at this point, it's not enough. We can't be quiet about the people that do the work. We can't be quiet about the importance of the work. We can't be quiet about the fact that that work needs done and we need more people to do it. As the I think the fact that we live in a society where the entire society does not realize that we have a major workforce shortage in a foundational in the industry that maintains all of our infrastructure, and that we have a massive amount of aging infrastructure that needs maintained or replaced, and a huge amount of new projects coming in. You see, all the Amazon facilities going in, new Tesla gigafactories, and we've got a huge Samsung facility coming in here. It's all adds up, and the fact that society as a whole does not realize that and isn't alarmed by it means that we need to be louder, and not just to each other, but we need to be louder in our conversation with those who are outside of the industry as well. We need to broaden our net when it comes to hiring. We need to find different ponds to hire from, right? We need to go try to get the barista from Starbucks who is tired of just making the same coffee order every single day and wants to do something more. Not knocking baristas, but some people want more to life than that. We need the person who's burnt out, who's been working as an admin or working in accounting for 20 years. There's a lady that I did a video profile on, and she is a water truck driver, and she worked in an office for 20 plus years, and one day decided she was tired of it and she was trying to figure out what she wanted to do. She saw a semi drive past her and her husband, and she said, "I want to drive a truck." Within 4 weeks, she had her CDL and she became a water truck driver, and she's been doing it for 8 years now, and she loves it. And she's the most joyful person I ever have run into on a job site. She loves it. And she came from this background that is like, if you get that office job and you go do that, you go to college, that's the American dream that's laid out before you, right? And yet it's screwed on so backwards when you look and see how much joy she has doing what she's doing now, which is considered by society as a lesser than career or as an easier path.
That is an awesome story. I absolutely love it. I mean, there's so many places to take that conversation, but it really reminds me again of going to school, coming out and being like, okay, awesome. I've got my degree, learned lots of good stuff, met lots of good people, but this is not the path for me. I want to be outside. I want to, I want to, do that tangible job. And that was really a really cool part of my career. Thanks for sharing that. That was really cool.
Of course.
So let me, a couple more quick questions. Do you have any sort of thoughts or opinions on how construction companies can show appreciation to their workers?
Biggest thing you could do is listen. That's the biggest thing you could do. Create an open avenue of communication, even if it's inconvenient, even if it seems like an expense. I think that as contractors, oftentimes it's very black and white, right? You've got your expenses and you have your profits, and it falls on one side or another. And the issue with that, of course, is there are things you can do that cost time now that are very hard to quantify on a piece of paper, the exact amount of ROI or the exact amount of value that you're going to get in the future. But this is one of those things that is, without a doubt, investing time in listening to your people will always pay off. The second thing is figure out how to create an offer that people can't refuse to want to come work for you, right? People want to learn, they want to grow, and not just in their job, they want to learn and grow as humans and individuals, right? If you can teach them how to make money, how to be more wealthy and more wise with what they have, what they're receiving from their job, if you can teach them how to be healthier with their lifestyle, the things that really matter in life that give them freedom to either, not have huge back problems from running a dozer for 25 years, or to be in better shape because they're not drinking a Monster every morning and throwing down 3 corner store hot dogs, like at
Yeah.
lunchtime. um, and so those things go a long way, and that's the stuff that should be invested in. I think the other thing I will shamelessly plug is showing off and making sure that you have an actual visible presence online. Um,
Yeah.
the amount of, as much as contractors tend to hate social media, as much as I hate social media, as much as the average Joe might hate social media, it is such a useful tool when you use it right. And the
Mhm.
fact of the matter too is that the generation you're trying to attract is absolutely on it. It's absolutely on it. And you don't go market, if you're looking for a certain thing, if you want a customer to come buy your cars, you don't go market in a place where people can't afford your cars, right? You go where they are, where your customers are. And that's what it is in this case. The people you're trying to hire are your customers, right? And you need to go where they are to get them. And so being able to tell your story, tell your people's story on social media, on your website, having a clear way to find you and a clear route to come and work for you is so important, because every other industry that you're competing with for people has it.
Yeah.
It's
Daniel,
just true.
um, I really agree with everything you're saying here. You know, this this has been an awesome chat. I'm just kind of watching our time here a little bit, but I wanted to ask you one more question. We always ask everyone because we're a construction company. What's your favorite piece of equipment?
Man, that's a hard one. I've got to go with, I've honestly got to go with the trencher. And I know that's a
Yeah,
unique one. It's a unique
it
one,
is.
but I've spent a fair amount of time around them. They're pretty well utilized down here in Texas and in the Southwest. And um, I've actually gotten to run a few, which is pretty cool. And I've seen all
Wow.
different sizes of them. I think the biggest thing though is that was the first piece of equipment that I ever walked up to and realized, like, actually put two and two together, and realized what the hell was going on. And so
Right.
that sticks with me. Every time I see a Vermeer T 1150, right? I'm just
Right.
like, that's what started it all, So I've got to go with the trencher.
Yeah, that's cool. Most of for my career and most of what we see up here is much smaller, right? Or at least maybe it's just my career. I was seeing it with landscaping and irrigation, but yeah, that big gear is super cool. Yeah. So, anyways, Daniel, thank you so much. This really has been a great conversation. Yeah, thanks for joining Building Builders podcast, and I hope we get a chance to catch up in the future and talk some more.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate everything that you're doing, Kevin and Luke. I appreciate all your help getting me on here and getting me set up and kind of figuring out the questions. Y'all are awesome.